computer. I think I'm getting, do you guys see my face or do you guys see David and Sylvia?
I mean, there's comparison.
There we go. Is that better?
We're on gallery view.
Yeah. Let's just jump in right here. Let me share my screen and let's share our agenda. But these are the products that I put together that I think that everybody should know how to articulate and how to sell. I think I sent everybody a copy of this. If you're on my email list, then you'll get a copy of all my slides. So you can just take notes on them or whatever you want. If you need anything from me when it comes to marketing material, let me know and I will just send it to you.
Thank you.
The best way is to email me. I run a zero inbox, which means when I get an email, when I open it, I respond to it. So within 24 hours, I open it, respond to it, and then go from there. But today, last week, we talked a little bit about term, how to sell term and protection and all that kind of good stuff. And today, we're going to be talking about whole life. 3 concepts that I kind of throw out there that work well is 4 parts to a whole life. As a professional, there's 4 parts to a whole life. Just like a car has 4 tires. We know that's how it works. And it's we need to know how 4 parts work interchangeably so we can build it properly. Plus we have riders. I'll show you exactly how we do that later. We're going to talk about who to present to, and then a little bit of an asset allocation tool. And one of the things that we, some of the questions we have is, do you have to know all the products, how all the products works to do well in business? Can everyone shake your head yes or no? What do you guys think? Do you have to know how all the product works? I see half of you shake your head. You do not?
Yeah, I agree.
You need to.
We should know how the product works. KYP.
I think I know many people in business that do very well, but don't know how the product works. You have to know people and be liked. Hey, if I could be liked and know nothing about product, I would make a lot more money than if I knew everything about product and didn't know likable people. It's not a zero-sum game. We can be good at everything, but you don't have to be an expert. You don't have to understand any of this to do well. People will tell you what they want, believe it or not. You just got to go, and then you go learn about it after. Hey, here's another question. If you were an expert at what you did, would you have more success? So on an individual level, I gain my confidence from knowing what I'm talking about. Now, I've met women who gain their confidence from good looks. I've met men who gain their confidence from big muscles. I've met people that gain their confidence from what they did 10 years ago. My confidence comes from knowing what I'm doing. So I'm always nervous of like, I'm always reading, trying to learn. Wherever you get your confidence from, you need to be an expert at getting that confidence, right?
Exactly.
Hey, when training someone or selling something that has a large impact on their future, should you be knowledgeable? So not a decision, but a moral decision of, hey, I should sell I should know what I'm talking about. And if you don't, just bring someone. Here's the last comment or question. Knowing your craft is not a sales tactic. Just know your job, right? And go to work. Life is easier when you know what you're doing. And you don't know what you're doing, life is a lot harder. And so we're going to go through and talk about the proper sales path. The proper sales path looks like this. So we go through a series of agreements with a client. If you disagree with the client, it is detrimental to your relationship. For example, if you ask questions that are controversial, it is detrimental to your relationship. For example, if you ask questions that are controversial, it is detrimental to your relationship. For example, if you ask questions that are controversial, it is detrimental to your relationship. For example, if you ask questions that are controversial, it is detrimental to your relationship. For example, if you ask questions that are controversial, it is detrimental to your relationship. For example, if you ask questions that are controversial, it is detrimental to your relationship. For example, if you ask questions that are controversial, it is detrimental to your relationship. For example, if you ask questions that are controversial, it is detrimental to your relationship. For example, if you ask questions that are controversial, it is detrimental to your relationship. For example, if you ask questions that are controversial, it is detrimental to your relationship. For example, if you ask questions that are controversial, it is detrimental to your relationship. For example, if you ask questions that are controversial, it is detrimental to your relationship. For example, if you ask questions that Like, what do you think about religion? What do you think about the COVID? What do you think about investing in real estate? What do you think about anything to do with politics? Then when they ask you a question, it's a trap. You have to say, you know, what I agree is I just want to take care of my family, you know, and then they agree with that. They can't argue with that, right? But one of the things we want to agree on is values and principles. And we don't get an appointment. The way we get an appointment is by agreeing on values and principles. So if my brand is I'm a salesman that just runs around selling, my value is selling, they don't want to meet with me. Unless, of course, they want to work with me and sell. So you'll attract that. But if my value is I want to spend time with my family, have a good career, you know, and they think it's the same thing, we get along, great. Where most people make a mistake is the concept that once someone buys a product, for example, I got a client I talked to last week, husband and wife. Husband had a heart attack, he's uninsurable. The wife bought a layered term with a whole life base. And if you don't know some of the languages that I use, just say, I don't know what that means, a layered term with a whole life base. Just pause me and I'll explain it. If you don't know, then most people don't know. But, and then the husband says, this is good for our kids. And the wife says, I bought this so my family gets rich when I die. So her concept is when I die, my family gets rich. And which is fine, but she bought the wrong concept, you know, so she doesn't, I don't like that concept, but that's what a lot of people think. The strategy is how it's built, and the product is what they pay. You know, they've got to pay somebody. There's a bunch of legal stuff that has to go in. You got to be licensed to talk about product. And so we want to make an agreement of, hey, these are the agreements. Usually this process happens. I collect their data. As I'm collecting their data, I'm learning about the concepts they believe in. You know, if they got kids, for example, with term, it's so easy to sell if someone is married with kids without term insurance. Because we say, hey, you got to protect your income. They say, oh, that makes a lot of sense. And we do dime and we go from there. But with whole life, the concept is more foreign. So I'm going to read from you 256 of the System Builder book. I don't know if you believe that Swan thinks you talk about concepts and then product or this order, but he says here, keep it simple. Don't overload people with facts and figures. We're going to do that later today, just to give you an understanding, but we have to do that eventually. It is important that people understand financial concepts and what our services and products do for them, strategy. Make sure people understand the benefit as well as the costs. Product. Make sure it's good for them. Values and principles. Time yourself. People don't have the whole night to listen. Then let them make a decision. And so that is on a mission 257. And he says, people make up their own minds. Those people who want to buy, they will buy. Those people who don't want to buy, no matter what, they won't buy. So if you want to have a great closing ratio, sell to the person who wants to buy. And if the person doesn't want to buy, don't sell to them. And if you don't make a sale, you share important information that may help change people's lives. The 257, I like that book. But let's go through, we're going to spend some time on some concepts, and then we'll spend a little bit of time on the product. But when we'll go from here, these are some concepts. These are some concepts that that we use to sell whole life. Now, some of them also sell term, but I have a gallery open. Can you guys put your favorite concept? Can you guys put a clap hands, thumbs up, crying, party, heart, that other face, O face, happy face, whatever that is? This is the last emoji, I ran out of them. But which one's your favorite? Or zero, don't put any comment. how well, I see very little emojis, but how well do we know these concepts? Can we shake our head not well or very, very well? So then if we know the product better than the concept, that's very salesy. People hate those people. You don't want to be hated by the people that hate salespeople because they tell all their friends. So what I want to do is go through some of these concepts with some kind of timing to say, this is the foundation of what they buy. A concept has to be something that they memorize, they understand, and the price does not matter because they say, I know what I'm doing. Just like when I get into my car, I drive a car with an airbag. I've never used it, but I appreciate it. I don't really know if it works, to tell you the truth. My car is 20 years old, but that's life insurance. And by the way, you know how much more I paid for my car to get the airbag? No more. It just came with it. So I'm very fortunate it has an airbag. It's a safety feature. That's a concept. People think, yeah, that makes sense. I agree, this has an airbag. Now when they drive with me, I still can't speed, but they're a little safer. So an airbag is a concept. By the way, I don't know very many people that have been hit with an airbag, but I believe in airbags. So that sounds kind of funny, right? So let's jump through these. And if you're taking notes, it's best to copy what I'm doing. And then if you want to take a screenshot, whatever you want to do, I'll send you this recording so you can look at it. But I use all of these, except I don't use family banking very often, but our competitors do. There's people that just sell whole life exclusively. That's what they do. So 4 quarters of a lifestyle, a life cycle. So here's how I do it. There's 4 quarters in a life cycle. A family, or sorry, I look at 931 right now. So these got to be short. I would say like this. Your life cycle is about 30,000 days. That's how long you're going to live. And we break 30,000 days into 4 quarters of like 7,000 days each or so, right? From 0 to 20, from 20 to 40, from 40 to 60, and from 60 to 80. Now, these 4 cycles in your life, or quarters, are when you are a kid. That's pretty easy. 0 to 20, no income. From 20 to 40, we're going to call that your firsts. All your firsts in life hopefully happen from 20 to 40, not before 20 and not after 40. So you have your first car, your first job, your first career, your first house, your first spouse, your first, your first mistake, your first prison sentence, your first career, whatever it is, right? Hopefully you don't have seconds of a lot of that stuff, right? But except, we say funny jokes, right? So then you're building here. You're building your family, you're building your career, you're building your net worth, you're focused from 20 to 40 to 60 on what you're doing. Usually, you're also taking care of your kids. This is when kids become, what I hear, more expensive. I don't know yet. I'm under 40, and then here you want to rest. Those are the 4 cycles. And so when we look at what we're doing, we're going to look at, hey, where are we and where are we going? So if you are 37 years old, for example, I'd say we are right here in the clock of life. When the clock strikes 12, it's it, they bury you, right? And so we don't know how long you're going to live, but we ask, a lot of people, when they're saving, you can save money in 4 different ways. You can save money for kids' education and send them money back. You can save money for emergency funds, send it right here. You can save money for retirement right here, or you can save money for the next generation. And I can save money to send to my kids. Now, when I'm saving money, am I going to save more than I need? So when I pass away, some of this money I'm saving here ends up going to the next generation and it continues to cycle? Or am I going to run out of money and my kids have to support me in retirement? You either have more than you need and you take care of yourself, or you have less than you need and your kids take care of you. And so when I'm saving money, once maybe I got a pension, government stuff, maybe my retirement is taken care of, my resting in retirement, and I want to save money for my kids. So different purposes have different products. And then we ask, what's more important to you? Your kids, your retirement, putting money into your career, or having an emergency fund? What's the most important? Whatever they say, that's what you sell them. You just pray. Hopefully the kids are important to them. You say a little prayer before you go to the meeting. If they say, my number one goal is to party and just go to the bar every weekend, as he's saying, okay, this kind sucks. You have to upgrade your friends. So that's 4 quarters of a lifestyle. And I say, listen, if you buy a term policy, by the way, I'm not against term, but today is not term insurance. And there are different strategies, different concepts. We don't usually use the same premium dollar for this. But if I say, if you buy a term insurance, that's going to cover you from, term insurance is going to cover you from here to here. It's going to keep you safe while you're building a career. But it's going to run out. So it's not going to end up going to your kids. It just protects your spouse and your family. So we want to make sure your policy lasts longer than you do. And that's it. Is there any questions about this concept? About trying to get them to think that life is cyclical. I don't get born and then I die. And actually, I get born, I have kids, I take care of my kids. When I die, my money then takes care of my kids. Is this simple? This is a pretty cool concept. Can someone, let's have a quick conversation. By the way, that took me 5 minutes, and that's a longer one. Does that help sell?
I really like this demonstration of, it's very simple, but succinct.
Why are they saving money? They say, my number one goal is to make sure my kids can put a down payment on a house. Wonderful. Then we say, then you got a policy. Any questions about this on how I do it? And by the way, you can force people to listen to a concept. You say, hey, watch this. This is what I'm doing lots of. What do you think? Yeah, and then you can leave. So you can just show them something and leave. I
have a comment that when you talk about this, you can we can have clients that have multiple needs, like multiple objectives, right? Not just one specific objective. Someone will take care of their kids and as well want to leave assets for the next generation, right?
So on average, people own 13 products in Canada. The number one financial firm in North America that gets the most of those products is Wells Fargo. They get an average of 5. Wells Fargo gets an average of 5. They do the mortgage, they do the line of credit, they do the bank account, they do the credit card, they do the car insurance, they do whatever they can. They do the fake bank account, a couple years back ago. But we want to sell every product to everybody. Yeah. There's no, we'll show today how whole life works, but you got to sell lots of product to survive. You can't just sell one product to survive. So hey, if you can, power to you, but no, people own lots of products. We want to sell lots of products. I think that's awesome. So here's a lake to the river to the lake. This one doesn't have a name, but I use it quite a bit with higher net worth clients. And I say, here's what we do. You have a lake. This is your retirement. You're going to build the lake. Then you turn it into a river. This is your income. All rivers run to the ocean. And then what happens is the ocean evaporates. It rains, and then on top of a mountain, you have another lake. And so your lake turns into your income because you can have a cash flow, you have water flow, you have cash flow. Now, when you pass away, if you build up a lake, that's your net worth, you can send your net worth to your children, or you can send cash flow to your children. But if you build up and this goes to your children and they have a lake, let's say your kids inherit a lot of money. What are they going to do with it? You don't know. But what if you give your kids cash flow? What if you give them, instead of $1 million, you give them $3,000 a month? What are they going to do with the first month? Blow it. Second month, blow it. What are they going to do after about 3 years? Live on it. And so we can say, do we want to give lump sums to our children? Or do we want to give cash flow to our children? That's a case for either an annuity or putting life insurance into a trust and having a trust having a limited payout. So instead of my son inheriting $1 million, he can inherit $2,000 a month. And so I want the river is the most valuable. So I say, listen, we're going to not give a lump sum. We're going to try to transfer that river. It's much more difficult than just saving money and putting a beneficiary on it. Go to a lake, to the river, not to a lake, to the river. If everybody in my bloodline has income, we're free. But if everyone in my bloodline has net worth, we're trapped. Any questions about a lake to a river to a lake? I name them what I think of them in my mind. That's why I call them. So that's not the official name, but it is.
I never heard this before, Daniel, but I like it.
Yeah, I loved it.
Can you go over the last point of net worth and being trapped? I'm trying to understand that.
So I was very not concerned with net worth when I had no net worth. Now that I'm building my net worth, I have some ridiculous corruption that I compare my net worth to other people. It is nothing other than corruption. You know, where am I at in life? Where's that guy in life? Is my market going down? Do I have enough net worth? Poor people don't worry about that stuff. I want to convert my net worth to income and live on it. But then you might lose your lake. So I can then protect my lake, my insurance for this, and then I can spend it all, right? So I can say, listen, you can turn your net worth into I could buy an insurance policy. So here's the strategy. One second, my pen is dying. Or I'm charging. So I can say, we're going to go buy an insurance policy replacing your net worth. Then you can spend interest and principal. And when you die, your family gets the lake. So I can switch it around too. But people become worried about money when they have more. Ask someone who's got $2 million in the bank, what do you worry about? Their money. You ask someone with $2 in the bank, what do you worry about? Their family. So that's why I say you're trapped by net worth. It is it doesn't lead to freedom. Maybe belief in a higher power or something else might lead to happiness, but having more money historically doesn't. Having more income might, but not net worth. So any questions about income, cash flow versus net worth, and which one do you want to pass to your kids? So widow's gap, by the way, these are things that we got to go through with the client, not all of them, the one that works. I sell a lot of widow's gap. I believe in the widow's gap. Ruth, can you make a comment on the widow's gap? You said this was your favorite.
Yes, if you have 2 whole life policies and one person passes away, you get the person that passes away money, but you can cancel the other one to fill it up because you might probably have to do your house to sell it. Like if
So that's the solution, but not the concept.
the
Right.
widow's gap is when if I passed away or if my husband passed away and I had to sell my house, it probably needs some upgrading. So I need some money to do that.
Yeah, so here's how I explain. Good job, Ruth. Thank you. Ruth sells this one lots. And so here's what I say. Usually people buy insurance, that's a lock, to protect their income. But there's other needs for insurance, and we want to know how much insurance you might need. So for example, if this is your timeline and there's husband and wife, and they're both 85, there's a problem that 4 out of 5 wives will outlive their husband. And by the way, all concepts have a problem and then a thought process of a possible solution. So let's say me and my wife were 85. 85-year-olds don't renovate their house. Is that true? And so my pension, the pension transferred to my wife within 30 days. So there might be a pension gap. About 6 months. It might take 6 months for my wife to get my pension. And my house, let's say it's worth 200,000, unrenovated. But if she put 20,000 into it, it'd be worth 300,000 because old people don't have renovated houses. When you go to an old person's house, there's really there's two ways to buy houses at a discount. Old people that just died and divorcees. So if you're a real estate investor, you love old people that just died and divorcees that, you know, their marriage died. But here, I don't want my wife to lose all the equity if I die and she has to sell an unrenovated house. So what I want to do is capture the equity. And so I might need 20 grand so she can paint the house before she sells it. So she's not in a rush. I also might need mortgage or rent payments for 6 months. I would rather my wife not pay for my funeral, but have my mortgage paid for 6 months while she's figuring out her next spouse. Right? While she can figure these things out. Also, what might happen is I might have a estate freeze. So all my assets might get stuck in my will as my son sues my wife. Right? Say, hey, I can't get my money, any joint accounts get frozen. And me and my wife, all of our accounts are joint. So she would be locked out. And so there is a need for a widow to have money right away when I pass away if I'm 85. She also might want to buy a nicer, smaller house. So I got to use a down payment on the next house. So because 85-year-olds don't usually have a lot of net worth. They've been spending it traveling, going from there, right? And then we also look at my CPP reduction. So if she has the max CPP and I have a max CPP, let's say we each get $1,000 a month, give or take, right? And I pass away, she doesn't get my CPP if she's already at the max. So we lose my CPP. But if we both make like $300 CPP and $300, then most of mine will transfer over. So I might lose $1,000 a month in income for maybe 10 years. So to fix the CPP reduction or she's not going to get my OAS, my old age security. So I lose a bunch of my pension or my pension reduction. So I might need to cover that. So when I pass away, do widows still need money? And these usually add up to 6 months to 5 years of income. That is the needs analysis. If I die at age 85 and my wife doesn't have 6 months income in the bank, she'll be homeless. That cannot happen. So there is a gap when a wife becomes a widow. What do you guys think of that? That took 4 minutes.
So Daniel, isn't that supposed to be done by the life insurance?
That would be the solution, yep. Yep. If they think there's a gap, we fill the gap with a policy. Yeah. And the longer they live, the bigger the gap gets. On average, a woman will outlive a man for 5 years. So I must take care of my wife 5 years after I pass away, statistically. Right?
Right.
Barbara, any questions here? Widow's gap? I use it lots of times to sell.
I guess I have a question here. So I'm just looking at when this conversation become very relevant for the client to take decision about it. More or less, it's like for advanced, you're looking at like, you know, widow. Of course, young people can be widow, but I'm just trying to relate that to talking to a young family, say someone that is 40, about some of all these things. I'm just looking at how they would really want to decide and act about this. And if you're talking to someone that is older, maybe this reality is closer to them. What sort of, at that point in time, insurance is now very expensive. So how do you really make this practicable for young and old?
Never say in my career that insurance is expensive first, ever, because you're going to start believing it and it's a loser belief. Insurance is cheap. You always get more than you pay, always. Now, you might pay more, but you always get more than you pay if you keep it. But hey, depends how much they love their wife. I usually sell this to men. I don't sell it to women. I sell long-term care and permanent CI to women because it's the opposite problem. So no, when they're older and they, if you think they have a great relationship and they're not going to get divorced when they're 50, it works out well. So you just got to choose who you sell to. The barbell strategy. So I say a barbell strategy says when we're investing, we can lose everything. There's no guarantee. And so the only way you know what's guaranteed is if it has a guarantee. But you can, if you take more risk, you get more reward. And so what we do is we have risk here and secure assets here. And so it's like a barbell you're pushing up. If you say, I want to be very risky in my investments. I want to shoot the moon. I want to invest in cryptocurrency. I say, perfect. For every $200 a month you put into crypto, you should also put $200 a month into a secure asset that you'll never lose. So that's why a lot of people, for example, in some cultures in the Middle East, where Jesus was born, they say you should have a third of your money in real estate, a third of your money in companies, and a third of your money in cash. And they say this is the rule. It's the barbell strategy. A third in cash. Well, it's worked out for that culture for a very long time. So, there's rules of thumb. Rule of thumb is 50-50 that, hey, if you want to take risk, you should also add safety. Now, a bond is no longer secure. So this doesn't work in a balance fund. We need a secure asset that you never lose. And that consists of maybe real estate, maybe whole life insurance, maybe bank account. But this way, go ahead, question?
Yeah, Daniel, when you said the insurance is cheap and you always get more than you invest, does this also apply to people who are buying term insurance? Because in most cases, at the expiration of the term, they don't get anything back and it doesn't accumulate cash value.
Oh, I just convert my term. It's cheap. I just convert it. I'm not planning on converting all my term, so I don't plan on losing on that either. But that's a value, not a concept or a strategy. I believe when people buy a policy, they can keep it for their entire life or convert it, and they get more than they put in if they die. If they don't die, hey, if I don't use my airbag, is my airbag still a good thing? The peace of mind I get is far more than I pay for that airbag. So that's my belief. Now, if we don't have the belief, I'm okay. But I don't know if that answers your question, but I'm going to keep going. Is that okay answer? Barbell strategy means every time you add money to a mutual fund, you should also add money to a secure asset.
Yeah, okay. Okay, thank you.
If a client has 100,000 in a bank account and 100,000 in a mutual fund, maybe that money in a bank account can be in a different secure asset. That's it. It's a barbell. Or retirement replacement. I show it like this. Here's the concept. You have two options when you have net worth. So if you build up your net worth, option number one is if you live a long time, you can spend interest only. So every time it earns interest, you spend interest only. That way, your net worth can go to your family when you pass away. So let's say I have $1 million at 5%. I can spend 50 grand a year on my $1 million. Then when I die, my family gets my $1 million. Or I can buy a policy to replace my retirement. Then I can spend interest and principal. And I can spend all my money, not just my interest only, because let's say an interest at a bank pays 2%. $1 million gives you 20 grand if you want to protect your net worth. Why don't I buy a policy worth $1 million? Now I can spend interest and principal in retirement. So when you're retired, do you want to spend interest and principal and then buy a policy? Or do you want to do interest only and just bet on the interest rates? Well, now they're like, oh, no, I want to spend interest and principal. I say, well, do you want your family to still get something? The policy goes to your family. That's the concept. It allows me to go broke before I die and not make my wife broke. I'm running out of time. Family banking means if we have a family and you have a place to borrow from with no credit check, that's it. The problem with family banking is the first guy has to build net worth somewhere. You should and you can only borrow from secure assets, which is like real estate, whole life or bank accounts. I don't want to spend much time on that, but you just build a place to borrow from. Questions about some of these concepts? A client has to agree on what they're buying before they buy it. For example, if someone says, I have a job. If I die, I need my wife to be taken care of. That's term insurance. That's income replacement. That's not whole life insurance. So the concept, and if that's what they want, sell lots of that stuff. You know, we sell lots of term at our firm. Any questions? You can put it in the text. I see the text here. We're good? We're good, I'm good. So they agree on a concept. They say, hey, I want to make sure whatever the concept is, I want to blah, 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 blah. Now they have a vision of what they just bought. So I say, here's the solution. Here's the process to make a sale. Agree on a concept. Usually you collect data, you show them a concept, they're like, I like this. Can you give me a solution for this? Yeah, no problem. I will come back and show you. You show how the policy works to solve that problem, and you make a bunch of adjustments. Gone are the days where I can print off an illustration, take it to the client and say, this is what you're going to buy. That works with maybe a simple plan, but a lot of times they say, well, what about this, and they make changes. So there's 4 parts to a whole life policy. Number 1 is the base. The base on a whole life is participating and non-participating is the same. But a non-participating only has the base, and the cash value does not equal the death benefit at age 100. I'm going to show you some examples. But the client needs to know, usually I just draw this out. I don't use a slide like this. Premium will never increase, and it can be paid off early. So you can buy a base in 10 years, 8 years, 20 years, lifetime, whatever it is. After you get a base, what happens is you are an owner of the insurance company, and the insurance company pays out dividends like any stock company, but they pay to the owners, not the shareholders. And instead of, if you take that dividend in cash, which you can do, it's taxable. It's a Canadian eligible dividend, or it's not eligible, it's Canadian taxable dividend. And so instead of taking cash, what you do is you buy a lifetime of insurance. So right here, you buy a lifetime of insurance, then a lifetime of insurance, and a lifetime of insurance. And we call it paid up additions. So if I'm 30 years old, they'll price out 70 years of life insurance, and then I'll buy 70 years of life insurance in one payment, my dividend payment. So the policy grows over time. Now, this is the opposite of a universal life. Usually, universal life deteriorates over time, and a term expires or renews over time, which you have a renewal issue. The second part here is there's an early, people don't like early, the low benefit early on. So we have a 1-year term enhancement of term insurance. It's a YRT priced policy. And then because the policy grows, the term runs out before it renews or before it becomes, the price becomes prohibitive. So we say the early low benefit is offset by 1-year term insurance. This is enhancement. When you wouldn't buy enhancement, for example, is let's say you buy a policy on a child and you can only get 100,000. Well, if you buy 100,000 of base, it'll start growing right away. If you buy 100,000 total, it'll start growing later on because you got to run the enhancement out before it starts growing. So if someone says, I want to pay more, one way you help them pay more is you dump the enhancement. The fourth part, every dollar you add equals additional cash value. So for example, if you have a base policy that's non-participating, the base here, oh, my ink is not sharp enough. The base cash value is equal to age 100. They're the same. So if I buy $100,000 base at age 100, it's 100,000. Now, if I have paid up additions, the cash value is equal to the death benefit at age 100. So now it looks like this. But when I do EDO, at age 100, I have a growing policy a little bit more, but every dollar I add to EDO immediately goes to cash value as well, because I own paid up insurance and the price goes up as I get older. For example, if I add an extra $3,000 to a policy, that might buy me $20,000 of paid up insurance, plus $3,000 cash value right away. So instead of having waiting for the cash value is low for so long before it starts to grow, I get cash value right away. So I can build cash value immediately with the extra deposit option. The downside of the EDO is, one, you don't get paid very well on it. So it's a blessing to the client, but not a blessing to the agent. That's why a lot of people don't sell it. You get a 4%, very much like a DC, and there's no exit fee for the client. But so there's no exit fees in a whole life, in a participating whole life. The downside is if you didn't buy EDO, you might have been able to just say, I want to buy a bigger policy, because you're not wasting money on cash value. You're just buying more insurance. So you're always offsetting. The more insurance you buy, the less cash value, they'll back and forth. But these are the 4 parts to our whole life. Any questions about this? No questions? Good?
No, thank you.
Good, Daniel.
The extra deposit option at Equitable, after 5 years with no EDO, the option is removed. They can no longer overfund it unless they apply for it and do a medical, if it's applicable at the time. So they should be exercising or they lose it. Otherwise, you wait till you're sick and then you start doing EDO. IA, instead of calling it extra deposit option or accelerated deposit option spelled with an E, IA calls it additional deposit option. It's the same thing. The first month sets the maximum for the lifetime of the policy. So I might suggest pay the maximum EDO, extra deposit option, in month 1, so you always have the option to add it in the future. And Empire Life has a minimum and maximum. So usually the minimum is about $100. On a $200 EDO, it's about half. And it must be exercised once in the first 6 months, or the option is removed. And the EDO can continue after the policy is paid up. So actually, it should be 36 months. Whoever made this slide is made a mistake. First 36 months. I read this and I'm like, that's not right. But so you say, hey, you gotta put $100 in extra later, and then you get that option for your whole life. And so if the client likes that idea, that works out well. But so some of the options, I'll show you how to quote and what it looks like right away. But some of the options is a max funded policy. We say, hey, someone says, I don't really need the life insurance. I want an investment that I never lose money. Now, if someone's willing to lose money, it's hard to sell them that not losing money is a good thing. Hey, if you want a variable investment, we sell variable. If you want fixed, we sell fixed. But we shouldn't talk them out of what they want, right? We should give them what they want. So or max benefit, built differently. Or term life, whole life combo, probably the most common, built differently, right? But we want to match the structure to the client and what they're expecting. Let me show you. If I am, let me show you a max funded policy here for a second. So I'm using a quoting software called Life Design Analysis. If you're on my team, you have access to it. You can just log into my login. If you're not on my team, you gotta go get access. But it helps. One of the things that helps, it helps more in training to see the illustration than actually needing it. But it's loading right now. Give me 1 second here. Takes a second to load. There we go. So here's a policy. And oh, by the way, at Equitable, their term rider as a base now counts for EDO. Incredible. Manulife did it a year ago. They got audited by CRA and passed. We were all surprised if you follow what their auditing schedule. And so Equitable jumped on the bandwagon and now does it too. But and so here is there's some, by the way, this thing I can show some concepts like an IFA or charitable giving. Hey, you want to give money to charity? Instead of giving a church monthly, where they just waste it, why don't you give them a lump sum? They can do a project. Or cascading life insurance is insurance on a kid. Split dollar is for employees. Insured retirement plan is when their other stuff is maxed out. But here is this policy. They're going to put $5,000 a year in. And the sum of the premiums, two policies on here, the sum of the premiums, $5,000 a year from age 30 till age 65. This client's going to deposit $173,000 into the policy. So they put $5,000 a year in. The term drops off, so you got to have the term to build the EDO. This is a pure EDO policy, and I can show the exact policy looks like this. So I have an enhancement of 3 years here. So my 256 is my death benefit, then 256, then 256. Now the policy starts growing because of my max EDO. In this policy, on a $5,000 premium, $1,200 or $100 a month is the whole life policy, and $4,000 or $300 a month, give or take, is the EDO. So I can see here, oh, I got two policies. I don't want to compare them. This is the whole life policy with a 10-year term. So if a client says, I want to save money for retirement, this is mostly built like this for in a marriage crisscross. What I mean by that is, client funds this thing, they don't want to lose money in the market, and they don't want to pay tax. If they own a corporation, their corporation can fund this. A corporation pays a 12, 13% tax. No, and then they with retained earnings, they put it in here. The earnings are not taxed in a corporation, but a mutual fund would be. If you want to do TFSA, they got to pay the tax, then do TFSA. So here, when age 65, they would have deposited 173,000. Their cash value is 400,000, and their death benefit is 800,000. I buy this. My wife buys this. We put in $400 a month, and if I pass away at age 65, my wife gets 800,000 tax-free, plus her 400,000 cash value. If she dies, I get her death benefit and my cash value. So we both are at 1.2 million, because I get a life insurance policy insures two people. The cash value insures the business owner, and the death benefit insures the beneficiary. So it costs more money. But this is a overfunded cash value built policy. In year one, the cash value in year two, they paid two premiums of $5,000. The cash value is $7,527. If you're used to seeing, by the way, when we look at an illustration, the client's not used to an illustration at all anyways. So a $5,000 premium, 1 second. No, I can't show you what I'm looking for. This is, if someone says, I can invest interest in a guaranteed rate at a bank and get better return, no problem. You put $173,000 into a whole life policy, and it pays your family $800,000, give or take, at age 65. You need to put $500,000 in an interest-bearing account, because you have to grow that account. For example, in an RRSP is the worst case. You need to grow an account to 1.6 million to give my son after tax 800,000. Because tax is the nightmare. So we got to pay the tax. And so depending on how you earn the money, depends on how much money you got to put in. So this is stuff I can use to compare, especially on some bigger cases. And we can look at different things. I don't want to spend too much time on here. But that's an example of a policy. And when I'm building a policy, let me show you real quick. This might be.
Yeah, sorry, Daniel. I think I have a question there. So,
Yep.
I know that all life policies are usually maybe a T20 or a T100.
Yep.
But essentially, this one you are funding it to 65. Is it that is a conceptual life pay that you just funded for that much of years, or how do you design that?
So I design it like this, where if I do a life pay and I'm putting in $5,000 with max EDO, we're doing it annually, solve for face amount, $5,000. We max EDO. I got a $156,000 policy with a $100,000 10-year term rider that runs out when they're 40. This is how I won the quote. And then I go back to my EDO. See here, I got $1,500 on my whole life policy, but $2,100 because I bought the term. So the term now gives me EDO room. Huge. And then I go to my report. I design the report. I add an extra sheet called clean information. I run it to age 100. Then I run my report. Then my report, my extra page looks like this. So I have here exactly what I show the client. You have a base coverage of 83,000. I match my term to the base to get my max EDO. Then I got my enhancement, which is just 1-year term. So it's $156,000 permanent. That's going to cost $1,200 a month. Now the government allows $1,200 a year. The government allows you to put an extra, let's call it $4,000 in. That's what they allow. So if we put the maximum allowed in, Our initial payment is $5,000. When I run an illustration, I want to show 5 columns. This is my clean information page. They let you build whatever you want. This is your required premium, $100 a month. If they can't make the premium, their cash value can make the premium. Cash value is $5,000, death benefits $256. Cash value is huge. Now, there's no surrender fee in a whole life. So if 1 year in, they cancel it, they paid $5,000, they get $3,000 back, they were covered, doesn't work out for them. After 5 years, the policies only cost them $5,000. They pay 25, but they have 20,000 cash. And their annual increase in year 2 is equal to their extra deposit. So they break even, not on net worth, but they break even on the annual increase in cash value in year 2. And now here at age 65, they paid in $180,000 in total. The term drops, so that's why it's not a round number. The death benefit's $800, cash value is $400, and it grows by $23,000 a year. This $23,000 plus the net worth then pays the premium. That is an uncommon policy, but they're bigger. But we need to learn to build them. I know that's I show you because it's less common, and a straight whole life you can build. But some people say I want to get my money back. So if that's what they want, so we give them.
So did you use an offset in that situation there right now?
That was offset at age 65. Yep. So that is a max funded policy. A max benefit, just don't do the EDO. Just don't do the EDO. So if I real quickly show you how to build it, I was curious if I should build them ahead of time or not. But so if I go to exact same thing here, same client, 30-year-old, I take out the rider. I say, okay, we don't need the rider because we don't need the EDO room. Now my EDO room drops. And then I say solve for coverage. Max, no max EDO. 5,000. Now I buy 700,000 of insurance instead of 150,000. Way more benefit. No cash value in the first, 10, 20 years. It takes about 20 years to break even. So if it's not intuitive, you just run an illustration, and you can do 20 pay. And then 5,000, you buy about 470. So depending on what they want, this is not a lesson in using the software. You guys got to practice that a bit more. Most commonly, a layered solution looks like this. By the way, most common policies are layered with a term. Once they understand more than one need, this is what a typical policy would look like. So they got a base coverage of $27,000. That covers a funeral and a widow's gap. It's not a monster, okay? Most policies aren't monsters. But we got to know what the monsters look like in case you run into it, you don't lose it. They get some enhanced. Permanent is $55,000. Now they got a 10-year term of $250, a 20-year term of $250, and a 30-year or till age 65, which this one is 35-year term of $250. The premium is $61 for the permanent, then $8, $11, and $19 for a total of $100 a month. $100 a month gets you $800,000 of coverage, and you're allowed to put an extra $92. Flexible. So if they want to max fund a layered term, the death benefit looks like this. Early on, they have $800,000 while the family's young. Then the 10-year term drops and it's $500,000. Then it's $400,000. While the term is in there, it gives that $27,000 policy a time to grow to $200,000. So the 35-year term allows the whole life, which someone maybe said the expensive word. It is expensive if you don't have term because it's so tiny. Now they got a $200,000 policy paid up, and they paid in $100 a month for 10 years, $90 a month for another 10 years, and $20 a month for the following 10 years, which they could have used the $46,000 in cash value. So this client bought 3 term policies and a whole life. They paid in, call it 12, let's call it $25,000, and the family gets $213. If they die when they're age 66, which is the worst day to die, but that's also when they have the maximum pension in RSP and TFSA, because they haven't drawn out their net worth yet, ideally. But this is a layered term combo. So even with term, you get more than you put in. If it's structured very flexible. And the clients, this is a monthly, guaranteed monthly, but actually paid a little more. They paid an extra $900. So they actually paid, call it 40, 50,000, give or take. So that's a layered solution. And any questions about those? I know we're going through it quick. I just want to show you quick. You should be practicing learning how to build these, especially when you're licensed, especially when you are a trainer. So there's no vote here. I thought maybe we'd vote or be interactive. Do you guys understand when max funded, max benefit, and a term whole life combo, totally different structures? Make sense? Nobody's going broke adding $50 to a whole life policy. Nobody. They go broke doing a max benefit with no cash value, and they say, oh, I ran into financial trouble. They had no emergency fund and no other investments. So let's continue on. On my time, I booked this for an hour and a half. I changed my email. I don't know if you saw that. But so there's a company out there that was built against whole life. That's how it was built. And so different policies are built for different purposes. You can build a non-participating whole life, which will have no cash value early on. The cash value doesn't earn much money. We'll talk about losing savings, and they say you got to borrow your own money. This company is called Primerica, and they understand how to sell term insurance. But I've never met someone from Primerica who can build a whole life or a UL, ever. And so, but they are there to serve the consumer. They got a good heart, but they lie, and they don't know they're lying. What they do is they pull out a piece of paper and they say, hey, we're going to talk about this and this and this. And they explain, for example, I wonder if I have an example here. No. But I have a script I can show you, and they explain these 4 lies, and they say, here's what we're going to explain to the client. And they do it on a piece of paper, not on the flip chart. Because if you put it in a flip chart, the regulator would kill you, because they're not true. So let's run through it fairly quickly. So when you bump into one of these guys, you say, hey, what are the myths? You know, no cash value in the first couple years. Cash value is not a function of savings in a whole life. It is a function of risk on the insurance company's books. For example, when I add EDO, it looks like I'm adding savings, but I'm adding a paid up insurance. And that paid up insurance is the same value I bought it for, minus the fee, the EDO fee, which is 8% at Equitable. One time forever. There's no 2% MER like a mutual fund. So there's no fee, but just one upfront fee. Equitable takes 4, they pay 4 to the advisor. The cash value is the present value of the future death benefit minus unpaid premium. So for example, if I have a policy that I'm going to put $5,000 a year in for 20 years, which is $100,000. So my unpaid premium is $100,000. If I buy a policy that's worth $400,000, for example, the present value is $100,000 because that's what I'm buying it for. But if I haven't paid any premium, there's no cash value in year 1, because the cash value is your present value of the future death benefit minus your unpaid premium. Once the policy is paid off, like in a 20 pay, the cash value starts to rocket because there's no more unpaid premium. And what the insurance company does is they say, we're going to try to get this guy to cancel, but we got to put X amount of dollars in reserve. So they'll give you that reserve if you cancel the policy. That's why at age 100, the death benefit equals the cash value, because they got to put the death benefit in reserve when you're 100 years old. They know you're going to die very, very shortly. EDO value has right away because it can be surrendered for immediate value due to no unpaid premiums on. So I don't pay paid up addition once I bought it. So if I put an extra $5,000 in EDO, I can sell that paid up addition, take my $5,000 back in a withdrawal. I can reverse it, get my money back. And cash value is a reflection of how much money the insurance company must put in their reserve. That's why it only works in your last third of life. Your last third. However old you are, look at your life expectancy, divide that by 3. The last third is when this policy works the best. The first third is term. The middle third is UL. The last third is whole life. So it depends when you're going to need your stuff. So I showed you earlier. I don't want to show you again. There's cash value in year 1. Remember I showed you the guy puts $5,000 in, you get $3,000 cash value right away. It depends how you build it, right? So they earn 1% on cash value. First off, we can never compare guaranteed vehicles and variable assets. We don't compare mutual funds to real estate, to Bitcoin, to gambling, to whole life insurance, to a bank account. We must compare guaranteed assets with guaranteed assets. So here, if we were to do the impossible and compare the dividend rate scale, which is the internal source of return, not the return the client gets. This is a little bit different structure. This is what the Equitable pays versus the Canadian market versus a bond. In 1991, the market was the best, 12%. In 1992, whole life was the best. Then the market, then whole life, then whole life, then the market, then the market, then the market, whole life, market, whole life, whole life, whole life. This is where the whole life really takes off, in the negatives. So this negative 33 versus 7.9, you notice how the whole life never has a negative? It's a function of law. It can't have a negative. Some clients don't like negatives. Long term, the 20-year average is 7.3 versus 6.2. So if I'm comparing source of return, a whole life beat the stock market in Canada. Now you could pick some other country that did better, but we pick a Canadian index. Over 30 years, they just squeaked out ahead. By the way, these has no fee on it. So you got to minus a fee if you're investing. Now here's the question. How much better if I have a safe rate of return versus a variable rate of return? How much better is the safe rate than the variable rate? What's my time? I'm going to race through this. If I lose you. So what I did was I built this. This is the stock market returns. You got some negatives here, negatives, negatives. This shows here if a client has $500,000 and they take $40,000 a year annually. So year 1, they take $40,000 out. Market returns 7. They add 37,000. The next year they're at 497. They're happy with you. The next year in 2001, they draw 40 out. Then the market loses 62. The next year they draw another 40. The market loses 48. Oh, it doesn't lose as much because they don't have as much to lose. Now, a couple of years later, they're at 305. Negatives, it's called sequence of return rates, are terrible in retirement. It's the opposite of dollar cost averaging. They almost build up to $500,000. Then 2008 would hit them. They have a big minus. They're at 250. Then 2015, they get another negative. 2018, they get a negative. In 20 years, they're at 10 grand. So in the market, they have 10 grand. Here's what I look at. They start off at 500,000, 20 years later, they got nothing. They pulled out 800 grand. If they were to not take withdrawals out because they had access to a whole life policy and they skipped the negative years, they would still have all their cash. This is the retirement protector I showed you that you just skip the years, draw from the whole life. If they were not have a whole life, now I don't have time to explain this too much, but I'll show you and maybe Luz, you can ask me later. If we added an extra 3% to that return every year, so if a variable return has to do 3% better than a fixed return to break even. So for example, instead of 7, they get 10. Instead of minus 12, they get 9. Instead of minus 12, they get 9. Now they have the same amount of money as if they didn't draw money out. So a variable return 10 is equal to a fixed return of 6. Because sequence of return risk costs you money. How much money? 3% per year on average. That's back testing, not future testing. And so when I compare here, a fixed rate of 7 versus a variable rate of 6, my variable rate has to be closer to 10 to be equal to a fixed rate of 6. That's the math. There's a cost to volatility. And in the last 20 years, it's been 3%. Now, there's a feeling of being safe too. That's why people do balance funds and whatnot. But this is when we're comparing guaranteed vehicles cannot be compared to variable assets. The performance depends on the structure, not the name. Some whole life suck, some are great. Some term suck, some is great. The dividend rate at Equitable Life has been between 6 and 8 for over 20 years, and the dividend rate must be declared 1 year in advance. I can tell all my clients what they're going to get in 2022, 6.2. In 2022, they tell me the rate for 2023 every summer. I'm a policy holder, so they send me something in the mail. There is no stock price that you can tell me what it's going to be a year from now. So there's some value to that. Some people say you lose your savings if you pass away. Cash value, unlike universal life, is a function of equity. With a house, the surviving spouse does not get the value of the house and the equity. So if I have a $200,000 house and a $100,000 mortgage, I have $100,000 equity. My wife does not get my $200,000 house and $100,000 equity. Just like in a whole life policy, if I have a $200,000 policy and $100,000 equity or cash value, my wife just gets the death benefit. The illustration always shows the total death benefit, which is the base plus the paid up additions plus the cash value. You can illustrate with all the pieces of it. In a level death benefit UL, the net amount at risk, the amount of insurance you're paying for, is offset by cash value. So less death benefit is purchased. So as you add more money to a UL, you can actually have less death benefit over time. We just must not confuse these products. You don't lose savings if you pass away. You just pay for less insurance in a level death benefit UL. Last myth, you cannot borrow your own money. You access your funds through either a policy loan or a collateral loan. You borrow against your policy. You don't borrow from your policy. You borrow against it, just like I don't borrow from my house. When I get a mortgage on my bank for half my house, the bank doesn't move into 2 rooms in my house. I borrow the bank's money, not my house's money. So I borrow from the reserve from the bank, or I borrow from a reserve or from the bank. In velocity banking, what it means is my money has 2 purposes. So my compound interest in a whole life never stops. I never withdraw that money. I take a loan from the bank and I just pay it back. So compound interest requires a steady interest over long term. So my money has 2 purposes or 2 velocities. By accessing funds through a policy loan, we avoid taxes. Nothing gets sold. It's similar to refinancing a rental property. If you have a rental property, you own for a long time, you never sell it because you get taxed. So you just refinance that thing. There is a bunch of ways to get out. You can go to Equitable, read their stuff. 2 more illustrations here. There's 4 asset structures. So this is more of a strategy than a concept. So when I'm moving to strategy, here's why I say strategy. You can have equity. My favorite equity is equity in my credit card because I don't hold a balance. So it's 100% equity, no balance. You know what the worst time to equity? When you don't have any room in your credit card and it's all payment. So I like equity in my house too. I like equity in my cars. I have 100% equity in my cars. I've been really blessed that way. But equity is paid off debt that you could maybe have access to. So paying off your home is the most common form of equity. Usually there's very low risk, but it's a low return because you're borrowing money at 1.5%, 2%. And your first house, your principal residence, is tax-free when you sell it. And the benefit, it feels good to own a house. Feels better than renting. Now the math is the math. It does feel better to own a house. The second one is an RRSP, then a TFSA, then cash value in a whole life. An RRSP, the benefit is you get a tax deduction. The risk is it's in the market. You get the benefit and the curse of the market. The interest over time can be around 6%, but you can have some negatives and some pluses, right? Give or take. It is 100% taxable. TFSA, you get no deduction. It is the same return. You can put it anywhere. So you can put it in a mutual fund, segregated fund, paintings, whatever you want to put it in. And then it's no tax later. And then cash value, one of the benefits is that you get what you would have put in if you pass away. So if I put $500 a month over my lifetime, I might put in $200,000. Well, my death benefit, if I make one payment of $500, they pay me $200,000 because I would have put it in. So it's very unlike a TFSA. You don't get what you would have put in. But in a whole life, you get what you would have put in if you pass away. That's the benefit of it. That's why it grows over time. There's no risk, just like paying off your home. And there is limited tax. If you die, it's tax-free. There's 4 ways to get it out. You can withdraw. That's taxable above your ACB. Policy loans taxable above your ACB. Collateral loan is taxable, not taxable, and a surrender. If it grows, its growth is taxed. That's best in a corporation. So I look at the client. I say, hey, your situation looks like this. You are your financial foundation is here. You got your term. You got your emergency fund or whatever else. You got 4 sides of investments. And this client is $2,000 a month. Of that, $1,500 a month is going to pay off the mortgage quicker. $300 a month is going to work. And many times at work, you get a match. So that's perfect. We want that match. And maybe $100 a month goes to TFSA and $100 a month goes here. So I say, hey, maybe a good strategy wouldn't be to fully pay your house off and race to pay it off. You might want to fill up your TFSA first, or pay off a whole life policy, or use the RSP for the tax deduction. So we want to spread out the benefits. I know it feels good to pay your house off, but it also feels good to get a tax deduction. It also feels good to have a full TFSA, and it also feels good to get a death benefit. So we can rearrange what they're currently saving. And they say, yeah, it makes sense. You know, whether not, or that maybe they do all RSP, but they haven't paid their house off. Okay, maybe we should pay your house off too. We don't get compensated to pay the house off, but once the house is paid off, then we get compensated because they get saved. Here's another piece. This is called a piece of.
Sorry, Daniel. Let me just ask a very relevant question to that. Like, is it intentional that you didn't say anything about the returns for the cash value? There was low returns for equity, RRSP 6, TFSA 6. For the cash value, no returns there. Like, is it more like the benefit from this is just you get what you would have put in, or
You get what you would have put in. The return in a policy is usually about 1,000%.
okay. Then another question that I get a lot, especially from especially for clients that at least have some knowledge of the possibility of getting some returns. They tell you, what's the chance of inflation on life insurance policy I own, and they're really concerned about inflation and whatnot. I don't know if you have had that before, but most times some people feel very insecure about it.
And then I'll get your question. We'll finish and then we'll do some Q&A right after.
Okay.
By the way, if I say number one thing to me is to protect my widow, no problem. Let's pay my house off and let's buy a policy. Number two thing is my retirement. No problem. Let's put the retirement in the middle. Let's build the walls first. Now, what's the rate of return if I die in year 2 of a policy? 1,000%. What's the rate of return on an airbag when you hit someone? You don't die. You know, it's worth it. Now, if you don't use it, is it worth it? To be debated. So here, when we're building a portfolio, these are the 3 pieces of a portfolio we use to build. We say there is a few places you can put your money. One, you can put your money at a bank. Our industry is banking, investing, and insuring. 3 industries. The Holy Grail does not exist. So the downside of banking is you get a low return. The downside of investing, you have to manage risk or pay someone to manage some risk. The good thing about investing and banking is you can get in and out in 1 to 3 days. So I can just cancel it. Yeah, well, I need my money in my savings. I need my money on my mutual fund. The advantage of a bank is it's very safe. Nobody's going to rob you. Your money's not going to lose money in the market. The advantage of investing is I get a quality return. And if I buy a policy, the disadvantage is it's only long-term. So I say, we don't want to just buy insurance. We don't want to just buy investments. We don't want to have money in the bank. Everyone has money in the bank for access. You need to pay your bills, cash flow. Everyone has some investments for retirement. Everyone has insurance because long-term, it's the best benefit for my widow. So it's a different purpose. But if someone says, I want to be maybe 80% invested, 10% of my net worth is here, and 10% is in cash. So if I got $1 million, I got $100,000 death benefit to benefit my wife. I got $100,000 cash for emergency fund, and I got $800,000 invested. It's a very healthy way to structure it. I don't think maybe net worth in insurance shouldn't be much more than 1/3. Net worth in the bank account also shouldn't be much more than 1/3. Now you shouldn't have 0. You should have between 3 months and 1/3 of your net worth in a bank. And then your insurance and it depends how risk tolerant you are. Now, if I'm investing, I think anything you're going to put in bonds should go here. A whole life will outperform a bond. A 10-year bond right now is 1.1. And you got to pay an MER on that of 2. So we make the money. The client doesn't make money on a bond anymore. So when I do a balanced portfolio, it drags the portfolio and kills it. So if they're a balanced client, I got to say, hey, we're going to balance it, do different, a little different. So that is just a piece of the portfolio. So we're not, if someone's only saving $50, just save it. But if they're doing like $1,000 a month, maybe 200-300 goes to a policy. If you do 1,000 to the policy, then they have no liquidity. You know, you need the in and out in 3 days. That's a very good benefit. So that's what I look at. Hey, people want your help. They don't know what they don't know. If you find them, it's likely you'll help them. And if you help them, they'll introduce you to more people you can help. Now, does everybody need a whole life? Nope. Does everyone need term? Does everyone need? No. But do people want it? 70% of the premium in Canada goes to whole life. 70%. So people are buying it, and they like the safety, because right now at a bank you can't get very much safety. But the main benefits are that someone who survives you gets a chunk of money, and you won't outlive the policy. That's it. That's the benefit. There's no renewal, and your family gets a death benefit. They say that makes sense. So I'm right on time at 10:45. Someone asked a question, awesome way to compare the BII, Bill. Not sure what that means, but question.
Daniel, can you just repeat what you were saying about the benefits of insurance? Like, how do you phrase that?
Like, this is the
You
part.
just said it.
The benefit is that you won't outlive it. It won't renew on you, and your family's going to get more than you put in. That's it. It's not that complicated. There's technical details, but hey, listen, you pay in this much, you get much more than you put in. Yours, you don't. It's maybe term is different or non-participating is different. If it's a non-participating whole life, the cash value doesn't grow. The death benefit doesn't grow. So different policies are different. This is Primerica's bullshit about they write down, they train their agents. This is their training guide, by the way. The current one, I pulled it off online. They say you get no balance first 2-3 years. It's not an emergency fund. It's a death benefit for your widow or for your kids. They say you're going to get interest earned account. You're not earning interest, you're offsetting risk. You don't borrow your own money, you borrow money from the insurance company. And they say the insurance company doesn't have to give you money for 6 months. I never heard of that. And they say they keep all your money if you die. Do you want to buy that? And then they just try to confuse you with a bunch of garbage. But hey, listen, if you're trying to protect your income, whole life can do that if you combo with a bunch of other things. But term is the best to protect your income, if your income is limited. We didn't talk about human value. That's another concept I sell a lot of. So any questions for me? Or I think let's do some Q&A, and I'm going to kill the recording.